Welcome to Tough Dog's Webinar Security Series of 2026.
And we're going to be talking about NVR First Time Configuration Guide. So before we start with the configuration, I want to go ahead and, just kind of briefly go over the hardware inspection that you would want to have before you get started with the configuration. Most of you guys already, do these steps. I just like to make sure, give a little brief refresher on it. So let's take a look here. We want to first, make sure that all the cables, look for any kind of pinch cables or tears or burns, damaged connectors. This will influence a lot whether or not you are able to maximize your recorder and as well longevity of your equipment. The last thing we want is for a burned cable or cable that's shorting to eventually damage your hard drive or damage your recorder or even be able to damage your cameras. So one of the main things is let's go ahead and inspect all the cabling, all the connectors, make sure that there is no issues with them. Verify the cable runs, right? Make sure that they're within the limits. Also, not stretch out a cable to try to make the run or even put strain on the connectors like the HDMI, that it's super stretched on the monitor, or the PoE connectors that they're so bent by the connector that it creates unnecessary strain that eventually will cause problems in the future. Once you have all of that, we want to make sure we test all our cables and power cables, make sure that the appropriate power is getting drawn out of it, and as well that the cables are being tested, the PoE cables and so forth. So it may be a good practice to have some extra cables like the prefab cables like the HDMI or anything like those cables. You may want to have a little some extra just in case you run into a cable that doesn't pass the test. And lastly, you want to make sure to start off with a configuration. You want to make sure you have your camera network connections, the USB mouse, the network uplink, and the HDMI monitor connection. With this, we can go ahead and start the initial configuration of the recorder. So we're going to step into the boot up and initializing the recorder. This is what you're going to experience the first time you boot up one of our TDSS NVR. What you're going to first see here, it's going to ask you first to select the language, and then it's going to ask you to log in with the default credentials. For TDSS, it will always be default password 123456. That's going to be always the default password for TDSS equipment. Allow it a couple of minutes. Sometimes with the bigger recorders like the 32 channel or 64 channel, especially if they're loaded with hard drives, it does take a little bit of time to boot up. So, anything between 2 to 3 minutes, that's usually what those bigger equipment will take to boot up. So you may see that TDSS logo on the monitor there for a couple of minutes. Nothing to worry about. It does take a little bit of time. After that, it's going to ask you to create a secure password. It does have a rating there as you're typing in your password, whether it's poor, medium, or strong password. We always advise you to go ahead and aim for a strong password. It will also ask you to add a recovery email. This recovery email is important that gets added in the event the password is forgotten. Without that recovery email, it's really going to complicate things. It can still be done, but it just creates a time period of waiting for us and technical support to be able to get you a one-time code. So if you put in that recovery email, it'll facilitate and cut your downtime by a lot. And it'll also ask you to create an unlock pattern. So it's an optional. You don't have to do it, but for easy access and you don't have to be consistently putting in that password, you can go ahead and create an unlock pattern. Then it should take you to a wizard configuration where you're going to select the time zone, the date and time, and confirm the system time. That confirming the system time is a very important thing, and we'll go a little bit more over here in the next couple of slides. You're going to set up your network configuration. We always recommend, especially with recorders, to set up on DHCP, unless you're having it set up on some sort of monitoring access or you're in a managed network. More than likely setting your recorder to DHCP is the best way to get it started. And lastly, you'll have a display adjustment. Right before you finish the entire wizard, the resolution is now matching your display. It'll ask you to, if you want it to self-adjust, and you can go ahead and do that. So I have a couple of screenshots here of what some of these will look like. So here's where the first time you ever log in, there's going to be a field where it's asking for the password. So this is the new password. All you got to do is type in that 12345 6, and then it's going to take you, going to give you this a message to go ahead and set a strong password. So you want to make sure that you go ahead and do that. Here's what I was talking about. You're going to type the old password, which is the 12345 6, and create a new password and confirm it. You see that little gauge there next to the password. It says password strength is strong. You want to make sure that's what you aim for, right? You want to make sure you set up a strong password, especially because you don't want that password to be easily accessed and people without authorization are accessing your recorder. And there at the bottom, you see the email. You want to make sure you add an email there. In the process of getting a password recovery, I would get a one-time code to that email, and then be able to reset that password with no issues. So you're going to go ahead and click apply there. And here's the section where it asks you to go ahead and create a pattern. Again, this is something that you don't have to. You can skip it there, but if you want to go ahead and set one up, you can do that. Quick note, when the recorder reboots for any reason, the first time after a reboot, it will always ask you to go ahead and type in your password. So that unlock pattern will not work until password has been entered the first time after a reboot. So just a quick little a note there. And here's where after you set up that password, you'll be guided to the wizard. It's a guided wizard, and it's not too complicated. It's really just 3 slides there. Here, you're able to exit the wizard if you don't want to go ahead and set that up right now. And you're also able to exit it at any point during the wizard. So here's where you'll set up your standard time zone. You can go ahead and select your time zone, select the date and time format, and the system time. Now, if we are on DST time, you may notice that the time is an hour behind. That's perfectly fine. We're going to go ahead and fix that later. You can go ahead and leave it as it is. You just want to make sure that you at least have the time zone correct, and the time and date and time format. The system time, that can be updated later, and we will go over that. Now, the next step here is going to be to enable your network settings. Some recorders have 2 NICs. Some recorders will have 4 NICs, depending on the model. This recorder only has 1. So it'll show there NIC 1, and then I'm just going to go ahead and enable DHCP. From right there, I can already see what IP address I'm being handed. And one quick thing to note is this specific section right here where it says PoE NIC address. Whenever you are adding third-party cameras to the back of the recorder, some cameras, the recorder will assign it automatically, but with some third-party cameras, you're going to have to assign that IP manually. So, this is the segment that it's currently working under. So as long as your cameras follow that IP segment, that will be the first thing needed to start integrating the recorder whenever you connect it to the PoE ports on the back of it. Now, after that, this is the message that you get when it's telling you that, the resolution that is native on the recorder is not matching my monitor resolution. So I can just go ahead and click switch there. Once you click switch, you're going to be taken to this timer here. Just go ahead and select yes there to keep the change. And then now you have the recorder matching the resolution of your NVR, and you shouldn't have any kind of awkward image views and stuff like that. So if it times you out, you can do it again. I would always advise you to take the recommended resolution that the NVR is setting for you guys. So once that's done, we're actually ready to start, configuring the system a little bit more in depth, right? Because now we already added the password, we set up the date, time, and the network information. So that takes us into our initial configuration system. These are the recommended settings after the first time setup. We're first going to go ahead and even though we already set up the first part of the network, we're going to go ahead and still go to the network information, and we're going to set up enable the P2P, and we're going to verify that the device is online. We're also going to go ahead and make sure the time is accurate by enabling the DST and configuring the DST schedule. This is a very important step because our system is cloud managed. Anytime you're connecting with servers, timestamps are very, very important. So enabling the DST schedule and setting it up correctly will save you a lot of headaches. It also enables remote connectivity. We'll go over how to go ahead and set that up. And then once we have both of these set up, we'll be able to go ahead and do the system update right off the bat, right? We want to make sure that the recorder is updated to the latest firmware, make sure that it is up to date so that whatever cameras we're bringing in, work on them. Now, in tech support, we always advise, right, after you do this initial update, and you get all the cameras working, we would always advise to only push updates when it's absolutely needed, right? If you notice some issues with the recorder, go ahead and do the cloud update. If not, like the saying, don't fix what ain't broken. So, and it's the same thing with multiple equipment like computers and stuff like that. It's just kind of like, you don't want to, always be pushing the updates. If there is one available and you notice your system is struggling a little bit, you can go ahead and push it. Our engineers and our developers, they're pretty good at making sure that the updates translate well with some of our older equipment on the TDSS line. But, better safe than sorry. Push the updates only when it's absolutely necessary. So I'm going to go ahead and take you briefly over, the network connectivity and the time accuracy. All right, so right here, I'm going to go ahead and put my pattern that I did to get in, and it automatically takes me here to the camera. We're going to go here into the system menu, and then you're going to go to network, right? I'm going to first make sure that my DHCP is enabled, or if I have it on static, by just disabling this, that the correct IP scheme is there. So I'm going to go ahead and leave DHCP enabled. And then what we're going to go here is go to P2P. So right now it's showing that it's offline. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to quickly enable P2P, right? And then I'm going to go ahead and apply it. Once I apply it, I'm just going to go back to network and then go back to P2P. And now you should see network connected. As soon as you see this network connected, that means the recorder network information is correct. Whether you set up on DHCP or you put it on a static scheme, once you get that network connected, we're good to go. That means the recorder is communicating to the internet and remote access will already work. The next thing you want to go ahead and do, all right, so you're going to go to system and then you go to general, and then you're going to go here into time. Right, so here you want to make sure, right, that it did save the settings that we had set up with the time zone, the date format, time format, and the system time. Now you have different ways of syncing you can do with the NTP server, which is perfectly fine, right? You can go in here and then you can add a NTP server. We usually use servers like the NTP pool or Google's NTP servers. But it really shouldn't. As long as you're connected to the internet, all you got to do is go here. So you can see right now my time, it's 12:22, but it's showing 11:23 right now. So I go here and I'm going to go ahead and turn on the DST. And for this year, it was on the second Sunday of March when DST started. And November is the first Sunday of November is when it ends, and I'm going to go ahead and apply it. And if I go back to here, now it's showing me my correct time. So it's as easy as that, right? You enable it, you go ahead and put your DST schedule, And once you go back, it should already have the correct system time on your recorder. So this is very important for us to set up. Again, due to the cloud connection, you want to make sure that this is always correct, and also for playback, right? For when you're looking for evidence, you want to make sure that information is correct. So then from here, we're going to go to the maintenance tab at the bottom, and then you go into system upgrade. And here's where you can go ahead and do the cloud upgrade for the recorder. You can also do the camera upgrades through here, right? So I've already done the update for this recorder. So if I do check for update, it's going to tell me that this is already the latest version. But I do have some screenshots of what that is going to look like. So again, you go into your system upgrade, cloud upgrade, and you click there at the bottom where it says check for update. And then as you see here, it has a current version right here. Sorry, it says current version. And then under it, latest version, it's telling me that there is a new version. So all I got to do is go ahead and click upgrade. Now, when you do this upgrade, you're going to get to this notification that's tell you that once the upgrade has been done, the system must restart. That's perfectly fine. You're going to go ahead and click OK. You'll get this little loading bar. The most important thing here is don't disconnect it from power or perform any other operations. Just let it do its thing. Depending on your internet connectivity, it can take anything between 1 to a couple of minutes, maybe 5 or 10. The files usually aren't that big, but if you are in a very remote area with very limited bandwidth, this may take a little bit. So, make sure you don't disconnect it or perform any other operations on it. Then after that, you'll get this upgrade succeeded, device will restart, and just click OK. Or if you let it just time out, the system will reset by itself. So you don't have to stay there waiting for it to be done. So you can click OK. If you don't get to click OK, it will do it by itself. So no worries on that. So once that's done, you have already set up the initial configuration, right? It's connected to the internet. You have the right time, and now you have the right firmware on the recorder, which is great. It's a great start. That opens the path to being able to start the camera configuration, adding the cameras and so forth, right? So by this time, hopefully all the cameras have already been installed. The cameras going to the back of the recorder have been installed already. The cameras on the network have already been installed. For cameras on the network, it may require for you to log into the cameras and set up a static IP on it, which is the best practice whenever you have cameras on the LAN. The ones connected to the back of the recorder, if they have not been initialized, the recorder will initialize them for you on the TDSS line. So let's go ahead and kind of break down here what the camera configuration is going to look like. So again, cameras connected on the back of the recorder should be detected if they haven't been initialized and they're on the TDSS line. If not, we can go ahead and start preparing the cameras. If you're putting in cameras from a different site, best practice is to go ahead and factory reset these cameras and initialize those cameras, and as well any third-party cameras. Some cameras on the third-party side may require for you to create a OnVIF user. So check with those manufacturers to see if that is the requirement. We have run into some of those when offering some tech calls that require for us to create an OnVIF user. After that, you can go ahead and do the network integration. Like I said, make sure the cameras have the correct LAN IP, whether they're in the back of the recorder with the third parties that you may have to statically assign a PoE private IP address. You can also use our TDSS tool, which is called Easy Tools. It's a network discovery tool. It's very useful. It'll find cameras that are not on that network scheme. So, it'll give you the opportunity to scan the network, whether it's on the back of the recorder, you're able to connect your laptop to one of those ports, do a port scan, a network discovery scan, and it'll find you all the cameras in that network. and even the ones with a different IP scheme. Very useful tool. And you can find that tool in our website. And then once you have that, you'll go ahead and add them either by searching on the recorder and then entering the credentials. And as well, if you're dealing with multi-channel cameras, you'll be able to map out those channels as well. So let me go ahead and show you kind of what that looks like. So let's go ahead. Right now, I already have this camera here connected on the back of the recorder, so you'll be able to, see my hand there. Um, So it was a brand new camera, connected it just straight to the port. I had to do nothing. It started working by itself, which, pretty easy. But I do have another camera connected on the LAN. So I'm going to go ahead and assign it to channel 1. So I'm going to click here on channel 1. I'm going to go ahead and go to CAN config. And then sometimes this won't show you automatically. So sometimes you'll have to go here and click search. And it's going to search the network for any cameras available. I have this camera here available. So I'm going to go ahead and add it. I believe I was able to initialize this camera. So right here, if this were to be like a dual lens camera, like our dual lens PTZs or our quad lens camera, you'd be able to select what channel you want to add it, what channel of that camera you want to add. And then you click OK here. And if you hover over that status column, you'll see offline devices connecting. That's perfectly fine. It takes a little bit of time to come in. So you can either keep refreshing. If there is an issue, so right here, incorrect username and password. So I may have to go here, and then I believe then it's on the default. And let's go ahead and click OK there. Let's see what happens here. Device is connecting. You can keep refreshing there, or if you go to the main screen, it takes a little bit of time, but the camera has been added to the recorder. So now, as soon as you see this little blue marker there, that means it's recording perfectly fine. Whenever you see that little marker, that red marker on the channel, it means an alarm was triggered. So these are very easy gauges there to see. So, it was super simple to add, a LAN camera. If you were to be adding a third-party camera here, you would go into, IP address, and instead of private, you would put OnViv, and then you would type in the IP address of that camera, the username, and the password. Most cameras by default are always going to work on port 80. I haven't run into a camera that is a third-party camera that works on a different port. But if there is, you update that port there. And the same thing, map out what channel if it is a multi-sensor camera. So super simple, didn't take more than a couple minutes. As long as you know the password, and if it's on the right scheme, the system will find it by itself. If not, like I said, you just have to go in here, switch your IP address, and type out the IP of the camera and configure it and the login information, and it should work there for you. Super simple, not too complicated. So once we have the cameras online, right, we have these two cameras right here. We can start working on the encoding component of the cameras, which is a very important overlooked sometimes step. So with the video encoding, it's definitely going to help you optimize, the recording and storage and, the bandwidth, right? So let's go ahead and take a look at kind of a brief outline of this, right? So the capture settings, you always want to make sure you have it at the highest level and choose the appropriate frames per second. The bitrate strategy, you got CVR and VBR. And then as well, you can manually input a bitrate that you want the camera to work under. Image quality tuning, we're looking at something like the iframes and the smoothing and smart encoding, right? So you have three different ones: off, basic, and advanced. And I'm gonna go over those right there. But you start with the capture, bit rate, you set up the quality tuning, and then you can set up your smart encoding. So let's go ahead and take a look at what that looks like. So you're gonna go into your audio and video. So depending on the channel, some channels may have mainstream, substream, and third stream. Some cameras have only mainstream and substream. It's perfectly fine. It works the same way. To start off here where it sets your storage mode, this right here, these two portions right here, these are your sensors, your sensor settings. You always want to run these at the highest point, right? So here, this is the highest resolution this camera gives me. So I'm going to run that. What happens if you don't run it at the highest? Some of the WDR settings and some of the image configurations, you kind of rob detail from it by lowering it at the sensor level. We can let the encoding do that, but at the sensor level, you want to make sure the sensor, the raw image that's coming into the recorder, is at the highest possible level. So, you want to go here and make sure that you set it to the highest possible level right here, which is that 2688 by 1520 at 25 frames. Now, the stream type is a little bit, it works. The way that it works is it's going to prioritize the stream either normal, which keeps a consistent stream pattern, or you go an event, which is going to prioritize event, right? So an event is somebody walks in into the frame, a car drives by, stuff like that. So whenever it detects something, if you want it to be the prioritize of the bit rate during an event, you can go ahead and select event. If not, you can leave normal. I always start with normal because these other settings at the bottom will actually as well do the same, almost the same thing. The video compression, you want to make sure you're always at H.265. It is the most current and strongest video compression. It allows you to maintain a lot of detail and be compressed a lot tighter so that the image weighs less and it takes less of your storage. The resolution here, it's up to you, what you're wanting. Obviously, the lower you go, the less that file weighs. If you want to keep it at the highest, that's perfectly fine. CBR and VBR. So CBR is for constant bit rate. The recorder will try to maintain this bit rate right here that we have. Will try to maintain that bit rate. So let's say I switch it to 2048. The recorder will try as hard as it possibly can to keep it at average of that 2048K bits per second. And so VBR has what's called, it's a variable bit rate. The variable bit rate, it's going to prioritize change in the frame. So when there's nothing happening in the frame, it's going to run at a very low bit rate. When something happens, it will spike up, right? So it allows you to maintain high detail in an event whenever events are happening, but also save a lot of storage when there's nothing happening. So if you have this camera looking at a parking lot that is very busy, VBR may not be the strategy to go under. CBR would probably be the best one. But if you have this camera looking at a storage unit that is accessed around twice a week, then VBR would definitely be the way to go. It's going to save you a lot of bandwidth, and in return, keep the other storage for the cameras that require more bandwidth out of that. The bit rate, usually, you want to start depending on the frames on the resolution that you're running here. You want to start if it's a 4 megapixel 2048. If it's a 8 megapixel, then it's like a 4096. With the H.265, it allows you to cut it down in half. So, because this camera is a 4 megapixel camera, I'm gonna go ahead and leave it at 2048. Now the frames per second is a little bit interesting because the frames per second it just there's a misconception, rather, that the more frames per second, the more detail that you might get, which um, in part is true, but in low light situations, it actually can hinder the image. If you have your frames per second really, really high, that means that the exposure to light is a lot less. So, in low lighting conditions, that frames per second, it may help you to even have it lower than the highest that it can to allow more light to go into the image and give you better clarity at night. So, if you're looking at a parking lot and you're not really looking for license plates, you just want an overview of what's happening in that parking lot, then yes, the highest frames per second is probably going to be the way to go. But if you're looking at an entrance to a building and you're trying to identify people walking in and it's kind of a low light situation, perhaps, maybe lowering the frames per second may give you better clarity because it allows the light to come in longer into the sensor. So, there's there's a rule of thumb here. So for just regular overview, you want to do anything between 7 to 10 frames per second. For standard, 15 to 20, that's usually where most installations lie. But for critical ID, you may look at 25 to 30 frames per second. But again, this is with good lighting. Once you start having low lighting conditions, like I said, having high frames per second may actually hinder the quality of the image. Now, whenever you're on VBR, you have this little slider right here. Um, if you slide this way, it's going to prioritize bit rate. So if you slide to the left, the recorder is going to prioritize bit rate over quality. If you go towards the right, then it's going to prioritize quality over bit rate. The good standard is to stay in the middle and then do the other settings. And then if you still notice you're not getting what you want, then you can go ahead and move that right there. The iframe. This is a pretty cool setting here. Without getting too complex, the for example, this system is working at 25 frames per second. So it's taking 25 shots right a second. But in reality, what's being stored and what's being captured is only changes in the initial frame. So what happens is on frame one, it takes a full complex image of what you're seeing in the frame. The next 24, the next 49 shots are just what changes in the frame. Uh, the sun moves, a leaf on the tree moves, so it's kind of layering over the initial frame. And then at the 50th frame, then it takes another shot, right? Another full frame. So that's kind of how the recorder is working. This allows you to minimize, that. But let's say, for example, you're working with the solar solutions and bandwidth is of a priority. The rule of thumb here is if you do get the frames per second for just standard normal sighting, you can double that number and put that in the iframe interval. So if I'm at 25 frames per second, then a standard overview would be 50. So every 50 frames, I'm getting a full image of it. But if I'm in a solar solution, you may want to go to 3 or 4. So instead of 50, this may be at 75. So that means that every 75 frames, it's going to give me, it's going to take in a full image scene. So this is gonna, help you minimize how much bandwidth is being stored, and also when it's being remotely accessed, how much bandwidth is needed for that. Now, if you're on a critical site where you want to make sure that you don't miss a beat, then you may have to go and match the 25 at 25. So every 25th frame, it gives you one full shot. So, in reality, what this means is every second you're probably going to be getting one full frame. And then the other 24 frames, they're going to be just changes within the frame, overlays within the frame. So this helps a lot, save bandwidth, save storage, and so forth. The smoothing here, it's what's going to help when you are in VBR. It's what's going to help not have huge spikes. The lower it is, what you're telling it is, I don't really care that my bit rate is going from 700 kbits to 3 megabits every other frame. So the lower you go, you're gonna get a higher complex imaging, which for critical ID, you want that. You want to be able to have the best possible image. So whenever you're wanting to catch license plates or catch facial faces, to the smoothing, you may want to go a little bit more to the left, right? Because you're not really too worried about the storage. The main worry is I want to make sure that when something happens, we have enough detail in the image to be able to see um the person or see the vehicle. If bandwidth is the point of importance here, then you may want to slide to the right here, and that's just going to try to keep that wave a little bit closer. So instead of going from 700 kbits to 2 megabits, you're going to go from 700 to 900. So it's going to try to maintain that a lot closer. In return, it gives you more storage and less bandwidth whenever you are streaming it. So, but again, rule of thumb, usually with these sliders, you want to start in the midway point. If these changes here that we've talked about don't help it, then you may want to start moving these a little bit. The last one to talk about here is the smart encoding. You have three options: off, basic mode, and advanced mode. With those, what that really is going to mean, right, is it's going to even compact more the image. So for critical ID, you don't want to have the smart encoding on, because that's going to kind of compact more the image and in return maybe lose some data out of it. Um, but if you're just kind of normal monitoring, you're not really looking to ID, but it's more like like for security guards that are just kind of looking live at the cameras, then maybe going into the basic mode will work great for you. This will still keep a lot of the data there, but where it compresses, it's going to be on the excess parts of it, not on the motion parts of it. In advanced mode, it really compresses the image. It really, really just compresses the image. And then, that's just more because bandwidth is, vulnerable here in remote solutions, solar panels, stuff like that. This is probably where you would want to be. But if bandwidth is not a point of interest, and critical ID is what's needed, then you want to go ahead and leave that off. The substream, that's just kind of what you see in your phone. So you can do the same changes on the substream. Switch it to VBR, do all that stuff that you're doing with the mainstream, or you don't have to match it. Whatever whatever you feel, right? If you pull up the phone, this camera can go up to 720p. So your substream will be at that 720p frame, right? So resolution. So then from there, you can set up the additional frames per second, the image quality, even the eye intervals. You can as well fix that and maybe put this on the advanced mode, right? So whenever you're streaming on your phone, it's a lot more compact. But whenever you go into the recordings of the mainstream, you get a lot more detail. So you have versatility there. Okay. Let's go back to the PowerPoint here. Now, the image quality configuration. This is pretty much, how it looks. And we got about 10 minutes, so I'm going to try to go a little bit fast here. But what we're looking at, we got scene selections. You got some of the popular ones are like indoor, which is for stable lighting, start light for low lighting, WDR for strong backlighting, perimeters for outdoor monitoring, and custom. Sorry, that's a misspell. It's supposed to be custom. It's for expert tuning. The illumination strategy, we got dual lights. If your camera has both white light and IR, you can set up to dual light, which is the modern recommended setting. You have infrared, which is for covert monitoring, and you can go straight white light, just having the white light on at night. So you can set it up on a schedule, or you can set it up to only turn on during nighttime. Exposure and metering. Um, you can use automatic for most installations, low motion blur for fast movement. The 50 and 60 hertz is to prevent flickering from the lighting. And then you can select metering based on target priority as well. And then you go into the color and image fine tuning. You can set proper white balance, do some minor image enhancements, and then you can as well rotate the image. So let's take a look at that here really quick. Yeah, so you go into menu, configuration, image. And then here's where the image scene, right? So some cameras may have all of these, right? Where you have face, WDR, starlight, indoor. If you selected these scenes, you shouldn't have to do much configuration, right? I can put it here on starlight and it's gonna prioritize, you know, starlight, right? Low lighting. If I want to go ahead and do road highlight compensation, that's more I have headlights coming straight into the camera. Face, it's going to prioritize face tones so that it doesn't overexpose it or underexpose it. So all of these pretty cool image scenes. And then once you set one of these up, you don't have to do a lot of fine tuning later. Some cameras have different, so not all cameras are going to have the same scenes. Something to think about. Let's see here. Now, the global mode here is pretty much how the light intensity is managed. Global mode, camera automatically adjusts illumination strength based on the overall scene brightness. And overexposed restraint, the camera actively tries to protect faces and objects from being blown out by the LEDs. So, if you're in a setting where there's a lot of the walls that can bounce that light and it gives you this kind of like washed out image, then maybe going into overexposure restraint is going to fix that for you. More times than anything, global mode is the way to go. Manual just allows you to set up the illumination brightness manually. But more than likely, global mode is where you want to stay. Once you select a specific image, you really shouldn't have to do much here, right? Unless you notice some things, then you can do a little bit of changes. I wouldn't do too much, or else the scene is pretty much irrelevant. And here's where you can go ahead and rotate the camera. This camera right here is backwards, so if I go ahead and click 180 degrees, it puts the camera there, ready to go. If I put it here as 90 degrees counterclockwise, what I can do here in my display, I can go into corridor mode, put that camera here, and now it fills up that camera, right, on a vertical slot. This is perfect for corridors, right? So depending how you're using that camera, you can go ahead and set up corridor mode by just going into your configuration image enhancement there, and then switch it to 90 clockwise, 90 degree counterclockwise, 180, or leave it normal. So this camera's backwards, so I'll put it on 180. The exposure, here's what we talked about, where you have your custom, your indoor. These two indoors are perfect for light flickerings when you see those little bars kind of sliding on the background. And low motion blur is for those settings where you're running into motion where you have a lot of motion in the area. So the camera's going to prioritize fast shutter speeds to reduce exposure time per frame. But again, reducing exposure time means it's more vulnerable to low lighting conditions. So automatic is going to go ahead and try to dynamically change it as the image changes, right? So automatic is a good place to start. White balance here, white balance is kind of you're telling the camera what is supposed to be white. So here you can go ahead and fine tune. You can do outdoor. If you got a lot of lamps around it, you can do sodium lamp, or you can do lock. So automatic, it's gonna self-adjust, fine-tune. It gives you you can set it up parameters, right? Don't go past this point, don't go past this point. Outdoor, it prioritizes natural daylight, and the sodium lamps is just for areas lit by high pressure sodium street lights, right? So if you put a camera in street lights, go ahead and set it up to the sodium lamp. All right, we got 5 minutes and we're almost done here. The last thing to talk about is the storage and recording configuration, right? We're going to define what the system records and how the storage is managed, right? So we're going to do the recording strategy, storage management, and disk health and maintenance. So you got different types of recording strategies. So let me go ahead and go back to the recorder. From the main menu, you go to storage. First of all, you want to make sure you enable store schedule here. And then these are the different types of storing strategies. Normal event here would be you can set up the schedule here on the time. You can go from 0 to 24 if you're going to record straight. Event is based on IVS and ultra motion detection. So if you set up any kind of cross line or intrusion, you can go ahead and set that up there. Now, the quick thing to remember about that, if you don't have a schedule, whatever schedule you set up on the alarms, then that will be the times that you'll be able to set up the schedule here. For motion, this is for only motion. Now, motion gives you a lot of false alarms. So I would always advise you to stick more to ultra motion detection than motion. Alarm, some cameras have what's called alarms in. So you can put sensors. And if a sensor is triggered, it can actually trigger an alarm in the camera and start recording without the camera having noticed anything. So, if you have like motion sensors and stuff like that, then you can go ahead and trigger that camera by using that alarm in. M&A means motion and alarm have to be triggered to start recording. M or A means motion or alarm, so either or. Now, once you have that, set that up, you should be good. Now, just so you know, here where it says hard disk, I'm sorry, it's advanced. You go to advanced. Here you have what to do when the hard drive is full. Override, it's going to go ahead and continue record operations. So it'll start overriding the older files. Stop, it will stop recording. You can set up system alarms to let you know when a specific when the hard drive is full, hard disk is full. You set that up and it'll let you know either through a push notification or to start doing a buzzer. Let's see here. So, and then hard disk, let's say you're having a hard drive issue, you can go ahead and click on this one. And if you've already done all of the troubleshooting and nothing fixes it, you can go ahead and click format and it'll format the hard drive. Right. So if you see anything here under status that it's not normal, you can go ahead and click format. It'll format the hard drive. The thing to consider is that it will erase all recordings. Right. So keep that in mind. But yeah. So once you have that, you see here one cool thing here. It gives you a retention policy here. So with these two cameras that I have, based on the settings that I currently have it, I should expect 21 days of recording. So this is a setting. Here's where you can find out how much recording to expect based on the settings that you set it up under. Once you're done with this, pretty much you set up the recorder from for the first time. The only thing needed after that, is to go ahead and add it to your project in the manager, which is here, P2P, scan it, and you're good to go. The installation of the NVR for the first time is completed. After that, you may need to do a little bit of fine tuning, but overall, this is what it takes to get your NVR running for the first time, and have some settings that will help you make sure that all the cameras are working at its best and the recorder is working at its best.